Welcome to another episode of the Dynamic Thriving Podcast. I am your host, Marianne Pack, spiritual guide into all things life transformational. And this is a beautiful part 2 of Thriving Beyond Religious Trauma. And my guest and interviewer is Lori Raggio. Welcome, Lori.
Welcome to the second edition of this podcast, Marianne. So glad to be here with you.
Yes. I am so happy you're here and that you stuck it out with me for part 2. This is wonderful. Such a delight. So again, our topic today is thriving beyond religious trauma. And a little addition to that is even if you have not stepped foot into a church or was raised in a religious background, you may also be suffering with indoctrinated beliefs trauma, because anytime we have been indoctrinated into beliefs that are very constrictive, very controlling, very separating us from a condition or a group of people, that is indoctrinated beliefs that can also cause trauma. So listen carefully as we're going through these, how these traumas affect us and what they look like, what the symptoms are, and how they can show up in our lives. So also be aware, this is a warning for religious trauma triggers. If you are triggered emotionally and this is too much for you, turn it off. You can leave this podcast at any time. But we hope that we will be gentle enough with you that you will be able to stay and realize that there is hope for you, for healing. You don't have to live in those emotional triggers anymore. You can heal and thrive. So again, thank you, Lori. And how would you like to get started?
Yeah, I think, Marianne, based on what we were talking about in the other episode, I think there's kind of this time of recognition that you or someone has been impacted by religious trauma or another type of trauma. And then there's another kind of step of, so now I know, but what do I do? So I thought maybe we would go and take a look at a little bit more deeply as to what are the areas that someone could be impacted by, say, a religious trauma. Talk a little bit more about those and maybe even, share some specifics about how you were impacted.
Absolutely. Again, Dr. Marlene Wendell created, she coins the phrase, the term religious trauma syndrome. And that was only like back in 2011. So it is a very new part of science and a part of understanding in therapy. But there are very specific symptoms. And Dr. Marlene said that the symptoms are cognitive, like you would have confusion. You were raised with poor critical thinking ability, negative beliefs about yourself, what you can and can't do, your abilities, your self-worth. There's very black and white thinking and believing. There's perfectionism. So if any of those relate, you might have a cognitive issue, a symptom. The next one is emotional. So this looks like depression, anxiety, bipolar, anger, grief, things like that are all encompassing. You can't just have a loss of meaning for life. It's just like, life doesn't matter anymore. Why be here? Social issues would be like a loss of your social network, family ruptures, social awkwardness. It's like you don't fit in. Because you've been held back from socializing with certain people. When you get around those people, then you just feel out of place, like a fish out of water. And certainly cultural is being unfamiliar with the secular world, the world. If you've been held into a bubble of religious community, you don't know about the culture abroad, out there beyond your waters, your sphere. So you may be missing there may be gaps in your education because you weren't taught about evolution, you weren't taught about some of the sciences, or you may not even understand modern art or the music that your peers listen to. For myself, that was huge because all of these decisions were made for me. And I was told what music I could listen to, what clothes I would wear, all of these things. And I didn't know even a fraction of the music that my peers were listening to. And I was raised in the 60s and 70s when rock is big, so I just didn't understand what they were talking about. Who is this artist? Who is this? What song is that? I just didn't know because I was so sheltered from that, for fear that the world would contaminate me. Then I will add one to her list because this was the dominant one that just punched me in the gut, and it was physical health. Our physical health is affected. So for me, that was lots of sickness, lots of illness. I thought I was just a sickly person, and come to find out there was reasons behind everything I was experiencing uh, in my illnesses.
And so when you talk about those physical illnesses and being able now to kind of step away, maybe less emotionally and take a look at that,
Mhm.
how how did the experience um, living with the religious trauma connect with that with those illnesses? I mean, where do you see the connection, Marianne?
Hmm. I see connection from a very early age. I mean, now that I get to look back and understand, after I left the church and started studying metaphysics of why was I so sick all through my years. And I found Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life. And in the back of that book, she has all these different categories of bodily functions, body parts, and illnesses. And then what she lists next is the emotional issue that could be the probable cause. And then she lists a beautiful affirmation that you can replace that with. So when I started looking at those, everything she mentioned under all the categories of what I had experienced sickness wise, that emotional trauma was because of a belief that I was indoctrinated from the church.
Mm. Can you give an example for your
Absolutely.
listeners?
Um, I developed thyroid disease twice. And not only that, when I was young, very young, I would always have sore throats, tonsillitis all the time. And then finally, about 15, the doctor said, we're taking out the tonsils. So we did a tonsillectomy. Well, then in my 20s, early 20s, and then late 20s, I developed more a thyroid disease. So anything in the throat is all about your ability to communicate, to speak your truth, to speak up for yourself, to speak your ability or inability to um, speak up for your wants, desires, and needs.
Mm.
Guess what? I was told I had to be silent because I was a woman. I would be in servitude, so my wants and desires didn't matter.
Mm.
So anything in the throat, those beliefs around that my unworthiness and that my voice didn't matter was affected then my physical form, my physical body. So that's just one. There's just a list of them,
Yeah.
because this started even. I remember even as a little kid and into teenager, I would walk around with just the feeling of a lump in my throat
Mm.
because of my nervousness. And I would wake up with sick, nervous tummies, and mama wouldn't make me go to school. I had migraines from high school on that was so severe. I had fibroids in my breast that had to be removed. And all of these, hysterectomy, just gallbladder disease, it was just one thing after the other. And then every emotional issue tied to each of those was exactly tied back to a belief that I was indoctrinated in. And I could see the connection. Then the light bulb started going on,
Yeah.
realizing, man, I suffered more trauma than I thought I had. When you start,
Yeah.
the light bulb in the soul goes off.
So really your body embodied or took on
Yes.
the pain
Absolutely.
that you were experiencing and feeling, whether it was psychological, emotional, social, it kind of, your body took on the ownership in some ways of
Absolutely.
that pain.
Yeah, because our bodies are I like this James Allen quote. It's one of my favorite little books, As a Man Thinketh. James Allen, it was 1902 or 3, something like that. But he says the body is the servant of the mind. So everything that we're thinking, and he was ahead of his time as far as metaphysics, because this is exactly what metaphysics teaches, is how our mind, our intentions, our emotions affect our physical world. That includes our body,
Yeah.
because our bodies just can't tolerate that kind of negativity for very long before it starts breaking down. Because our bodies are our normal flow is life force flowing through us. When you're so blocked off, you're blocking off your own well-being because you can't receive, so your body breaks down. And
Yeah. Well, and it seems also like your experience is an example of how everything is connected and hopefully aligned. And when it's not, our thoughts, our feelings, our body, um, then we have something that happens that kind of draws our attention to that misalignment.
yeah, absolutely. I think I was, always too scared to question too much when I was in the church.
Mm-hmm.
And then towards the end, when I was realizing this just isn't working out for me,
Yeah.
I just knew that a spiritual walk should feel really good, like almost all the time, not um, bashing myself constantly, almost like whipping yourself to punish yourself because you're in such fear and agony and, begging for forgiveness. They actually say there's about, when people are in religious trauma, that they are in that stress, high stress level for about, on the average of 3 hours a day.
Mm.
So more or less. And if you heighten that, if you're in stress, you're throwing off cortisol like crazy, your blood flow in fight, flight, or freeze, that is
Right.
your primal brain, your survival brain saying, danger, danger, danger,
Right. Right.
run away. So we're going to pump all our blood into your extremities so you have strength to run away. We're going to shut down your brain function because all you need to do is think of how fast you can run away. It shuts down your immune system, your digestion. You don't need to digest anything if you're going to be eaten by a lion or tiger, so it just completely shuts our body down. And when you do that, your body starts dying. And that's what my body was doing.
And so how did you, once you realized that, what did you do and what supported your healing?
Mm. I crashed when I was 34. The drugs had so affected my mental capacity that we had been transferred to Texas. I was driving down a road. It was by grocery store road. I had been doing it for about a year and I didn't know where I was. I scared me to death with my 2 babies in the back seat, and I pulled over in tears. I didn't know if I was going towards the house or away from the house. I just didn't know where I was.
Mm.
So when I finally got ourselves home, the next day there was a homeschool mom that worked part-time at a health food store. I had never been in the health food store, and I marched myself in and told the owner to fix me.
Mm.
So initially for me, I had to start getting relief within my body, doing a detox cleanse that was just phenomenal in kicking off my healing and my wellness. So that started on a path to more wellness over the years, but the well-being, feeling good, feeling right didn't happen until I started working on my mindset and
Okay.
releasing those old beliefs and installing new ones
Okay.
that resonated. So that's where I,
So for you, because the pain manifested so much physically,
yes.
your first step was to take care of the physical
Yeah.
and then follow with the emotional.
Yeah. Because I had no idea. I mean, when I went to that health food store, I picked up a little book on alternative healing, other alternative healing practices, and it opened my mind up to other options. I had no idea. There
Yeah.
was energy work that you could do. There was healing practices. There was feng shui. There was, light healing. There was different kinds of energy. And I was just delighted to find that there's really something outside of doctors and the church to
Yeah.
help me heal. And so that gave me a little permission to start just cracking the door on, why do I believe what I believe? When
Yeah.
this religion over here says this, and they're thriving, the members of that religion are thriving,
Yeah.
but yet my religion says they're going to hell
Mm.
because they don't believe like us. So it just started, oh, my eyes started popping like crazy because I love to study. So that was my saving grace as far as allowing myself permission to start questioning,
Mm.
because I had not been allowed to question before. Matter of fact, I'd been screamed at many times by pastors if I asked questions,
Yeah.
because I think they took it personally, like I was challenging their authority. Which
Mm.
maybe at the time I was.
Maybe. And so being curious and
Yes.
being okay with there may be some other options or other opportunities or
Mhm.
a different way is what helped you to start to heal.
Yeah, because I would have never addressed my mindset or the beliefs
Yeah.
first. It's like I had to see a little bit of a difference in my physical body
Yeah.
and then start understanding metaphysics. When that hit, it was like, poof,
Yeah.
that was a big eye opener.
And so would you say that your true authentic self was masked
Oh,
by the religious trauma?
absolutely. Because of the instructions about who women are, I could not let people see my authentic self, because my authentic self had desires and wants and needs, and you can't do that. And my authentic self was to share things with other people. Well, if there were men in the room and you're supposed to be silent in the church, where do you get to share?
Mm.
So, yes, you're going to cover yourself and mask yourself because you can't let that authentic person show. You'll be, you'll somebody will find some fault in it and condemn you somewhere.
Mm.
So you have to stay hidden, because for fear of repercussions within the congregation.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to complain and you're going to get told on, and then you're going to get approached by the leadership,
Mm.
you
And
know.
so when you actually left the church, how did that change who you were and how you showed up?
Oh, I was definitely more free to start sharing my ideas and my thoughts because I am such a deep thinker. I love to take a thought from the beginning and process it all the way to the end in researching and things, because I've done it all my life. I hold a biblical studies degree. It's what I'm trained in, research kind of thing. So I I just lost the question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, once you left the church, how were you different? Like how did you show up and how did that feel to be so different?
It was so freeing. I couldn't believe I could go to bed happy and wake up happy,
Mm,
like day after day. I didn't have to cry my eyes out begging for forgiveness. Matter of fact, 2 weeks after I left the church, that we left the church, I realized I hadn't cried once,
mm,
where before crying would be a daily trauma,
mm,
um, because I had to beg for forgiveness. I had to be so sorrowful for my sins. And the way it's set up, you can't help but sin. You are going to sin, you know.
mm.
So, just being able to just go, I
Yeah,
can relax. I can take off this heavy weight. As a matter of
yeah.
fact, my oldest son mentioned after we left, Mom, he was a teenager. Mom, it feels like a weight is off my shoulders. And
Mm.
I was like, oh, my poor baby. He was suffering too. And we hadn't talked about it really.
So
Um,
freedom.
freedom. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Just the lightheartedness. It's like you walk taller because
Mm,
you're not all condensed and constricted and
yeah,
pulling all your energy in. It's
yeah.
like you can finally shine a little bit, even
Mm,
if it's just a little twinkle.
yeah.
You're letting it out. That's good. That's progress. So yeah.
So, Marianne, I can only imagine that there's probably listeners who are at various stages in kind of the recognition of this process. So, for you, it required you to leave the church. For other people, they might be thinking, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do that or if that's the right thing for me. So, how can people receive support from you? Like, where do they go? What's possible for them?
Absolutely. I just want to say my best friend, we grew up at 8 and 9 together. So we've been best friends for about 53 years. And she is a very staunch Christian believer. She loves the church. She adores being at church. She, has to kind of tweak her beliefs accordingly, but she has found peace in the church. I never will ever tell someone, well, you need to just leave the church because it's toxic for you. Well, guess what? It's not toxic for her.
Right.
That is fulfilling for her, the way she has worked out her salvation. Like I said, she's tweaked a few things. I know it because not everything she does follows the Christian path of the way we were raised. But if I just want you to find peace and
Mm,
find joy and thrive, and if you can do it inside the church, glory be, I'm very happy for you and I will cheer you on and support you every step of the way. If you also have had enough and you got your toe over the line and you're ready to walk out the door, I would say, welcome home.
mm,
You're here with me. I offer, like I said, the coaching. You can do one-on-one coaching with me if you need a lot of personal attention. But really, the dynamic, thriving spiritual community that I'm creating is a membership that hopefully will be launched in June, later in June, will be a huge support. You'll have a place to belong. This is your home. This is a
mm,
sacred place for you to be able to come and share your hurts and your sorrows, but yet your wins and your celebrations and your joys, because that's where we're headed. We're not going to wallow around back in that pain.
mhm,
We want to move from here today. Now I'm moving forward. We're not going to go back there because our inner beings are not looking back there. Our inner beings look at who we are and where we want to go. And so we're becoming that person who is creating that new life, the forward motion that we're creating. So I would so invite people to get ready to join that membership. And in the meantime, I have a Facebook group that is also called Dynamic Thriving, and it's a spiritual community. It's private, it's a free group. So come and touch your toe in the water and see if we can support you there, and we can be, in confidence, sharing without the prying eyes of the public.
Yeah. Well, and Marianne, again, I want to thank you for being so vulnerable, and being an example of what's possible for all of us. So again, I would encourage listeners that if you've been able to really identify with anything that Marianne has been talking about, and you would like some support, please feel free to reach out to Marianne, and to know that it is a process, and that it's a different process for each person, but that there is support available.
Yes, for sure. There is so much help, and so much, as we learn how to, evaluate those beliefs and decide which ones feel good and which ones don't, which ones resonate with our soul and which ones we need to set aside. We can do that a lot with how we feel, and what our thoughts are creating for us. And so the more we can support each other, intentionally and with love and with grace, because we're all going to stumble. That's just the normal walk in this planet. And so that we lift each other up, because that's where thriving is, that community, that love, that sharing, that belonging. We are community oriented people. We're social people. We're not lone wolves, and we need to belong. And I just want to express to you, welcome home. You are home. Yeah. So I appreciate you, Lori. Thank you so much for being my guest and interviewing me and helping me share my story about thriving beyond religious trauma. And do you have anything you would like to share with us?
Again, to me, it's the journey. The journey is what's important,
Yes.
and realizing what the next step is. And then after that, being open to the following steps is the process. And it actually can be fun.
Yes, it can be fun, and it will be fun.
Yes.
That's what I love, because we are here. Our purpose is to experience as much joy as possible. And when we're not, we just need to tweak those beliefs and fine tune into who we really are as an inner being, as an extension of source energy in the flesh. So you can reach Lori also at her website. It is inspiregreatnesscoaching.com. It will be in the show notes. And please visit our website, mariannepack.com. There's the community page that gives information about the Dynamic Thriving Spiritual Community and what's coming up. There's the offer for Ask the Many. You can ask specific questions and receive some specific answers from my spirit guides, the Many. There's also the gift, which is a personal reading. You just ask, what do they want to tell me today? And it's very simple. We get on a call, you get your answer immediately. So all of those are available, and I will see you on our private Facebook group. And again, welcome home. So thank you, Lori. I appreciate you.
You're welcome, Marianne.
And remember, you are joy, looking for a way to express.